I never thought I would find myself in this situation. I always considered my marriage to Sophie to be pretty solid. We had been together for over 7 years, and for the most part, things clicked. Sure, we had our mundane moments, who doesn't? But I believed we were a team tackling life one day at a time. We laughed, we fought, we loved. Or at least I thought we did. But somewhere along the way, things started to shift. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was just life getting in the way. Sophie began to talk about needing freedom, which struck me as odd. Freedom from what? I figured it was just one of those midlife crises people go through. She was 32, and I guess I didn't quite understand what she was going through. She started spending more time with friends, some of whom I had never met. She had this new attitude about her, flirty, vibrant, and a little distant. It felt like I was losing my wife to someone I didn't recognize. The first red flag waved when Sophie began to spend late nights at book club. It was a small group of friends, and I always supported her hobbies, even if I didn't understand them. But her late-night texts, the sudden changes in her schedule, and the way she'd avoid eye contact when I asked about her evenings made me uneasy. When I'd ask how her book club was going, she'd roll her eyes and give me vague answers. "Oh, you know how it is," she'd say dismissively. "Just some girl talk." Something about the way she said it sliced through me, but I tried to ignore it. Then came the night I found the email. I was looking for my old laptop to check some files for work when I stumbled upon an email thread that would unravel everything. It was from a guy named Mark, someone I had never heard of. My heart sank as I clicked it open. The content was graphic, and I mean graphic. It wasn't just flirting, it was explicit. They were talking about meeting up, and to say I felt violated would be a massive understatement. It was like a punch to the gut. I felt sick. Sophie had betrayed me, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered trust. I sat in the dark, staring at the screen, my mind racing. I couldn't believe my wife, my Sophie, would do this to me. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I needed to think. I needed to gather my thoughts, my anger, and figure out how to approach this without losing my mind. The next day I acted normal, which was almost impossible. I played it cool during breakfast, even made her coffee just the way she liked it. But inside I was a storm, and I could feel the tension building. How could she look me in the eye and pretend nothing was happening? I couldn't take it anymore. After work, I decided it was time to confront her. When I got home, she was already there, lounging on the couch in one of her oversized hoodies, scrolling through her phone. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands and racing heart. "Sophie, we need to talk," I said. Her eyes flicked up, and I saw that momentary flicker of concern cross her face. "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone casual, but the way she said it felt rehearsed. "Cut the crap, Sophie. We both know something is very wrong." As I spoke, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I found the emails. Her face paled, and for a brief moment I saw fear in her eyes, but then she smirked, a cold, bitter smile that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, come on, Jake, you don't really think it's serious, do you?" I was taken aback by her nonchalance. "So you admit it," she shrugged. "We're just having fun, it doesn't mean anything." That's when the anger took over. Fun? She kidding? My wife was having sex with another man, and she dismissed it like it was just some harmless game. I felt rage boil inside me, and I pushed back against the urge to scream and shout. Instead, I took a moment, breathing deeply to control my emotions. "So you needed freedom. Is that what you call this?" I asked, my voice low and steady. "What happens when you get bored with him? Will you come back to me?" Her facade cracked a little. "You're being dramatic, Jake. I still love you." But those words felt hollow. This is love, Sophie. This is betrayal. As the tension filled the room, the realization settled on me. I was no longer the unsuspecting husband. I had become a man facing the harsh reality of betrayal, and I was angry, really angry. And as Sophie sat there, denying the severity of her actions, a new thought emerged. If she wanted freedom, I would show her what that truly means. But first, I would need a plan. I was done playing the victim. What I did next would change everything. The confrontation with Sophie felt surreal, like I was watching it happen from outside my body. She was sitting there, trying to downplay everything, but I could see the cracks in her armor. The sweet facade she wore so well was shattering, and it felt good to finally call her out on her lies. But instead of relief, I felt a wave of resolve wash over me. Once the initial shock faded, I started to think about how I could turn the tables. If she wanted freedom, I would give her a taste of it, but not the kind she expected. I had to gather strength before I acted. I knew my emotions were still raw and I couldn't just lash out. I needed to be strategic. The first step was to gather all the evidence I could find. I spent the next few days monitoring Sophie's phone and computer, trying to confirm what I already suspected. I felt like a detective, lurking in the shadows of my own home. Each time I saw her message notifications pop up, my heart raced. I was always one step behind, but soon I became proficient at piecing together her web of lies. I found more emails with Mark, each one more explicit than the last. They were planning to meet at a bar downtown, a place I knew well. I thought about what it must feel like for her, sneaking around with someone else, away from the life we built together. I let the anger simmer inside me, using it as fuel to devise my plan. I wasn't going to let her walk away unchallenged. I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions. One night, after Sophie had gone out with the girls, I decided to change my appearance a little. I knew I needed to show her that I wasn't just some passive husband waiting for her to come back. I hit the gym hard, got a new haircut, and started dressing differently. I wanted to be someone she wouldn't easily recognize, someone who could stand up for himself. It was almost a week after our confrontation when I finally got my chance. Sophie had told me she was going out for another book club meeting. With my heart pounding, I decided to follow her. I parked a few blocks down from the bar and waited, pacing nervously in my car. I wanted to confront her, but I also wanted to see the truth for myself. As I watched her enter the bar, I felt a mix of disbelief and anger. She was laughing, carefree, and it killed me to see her like that when I knew what she was doing behind my back. I waited until she had settled in, and then I spotted Mark walking in. He was tall, with a confident swagger that made me realize why she was drawn to him. I didn't want to admit it, but he was good-looking, and it made my blood boil. They found a secluded booth in the back, and I had a clear view of them. I watched as they leaned into each other, whispering and laughing. It was like a movie unfolding before my eyes, and I was the unwilling audience. My stomach churned when I saw them touch each other, a casual brush of hands that felt intimate and wrong. I was about to explode. After what felt like an eternity, I decided it was time to make my presence known. I walked into the bar, straightening my shoulders and trying to appear calm despite the storm brewing inside me. I could see Sophie's face light up when she saw me, the surprise quickly replaced by a look of panic that sent a rush of satisfaction through me. "Jake, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice higher than usual. "Looks like book club's a little different tonight," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm as I gestured to Mark. He looked up at me with a confused expression, and I could see the tension in the air. Sophie shot him a warning glance, but it was too late. I was just, "Save it, Sophie," I cut her off. "I think we both know what you've been doing." Mark shifted uncomfortably, and I could see the color drain from Sophie's face. I was in control now. "You think it's okay to cheat on your husband, to flaunt it right in front of my face?" She opened her mouth to protest, but I continued, relishing my newfound power. "You wanted freedom, right? Well, here's your chance. I'm done playing the fool." Sophie's eyes widened, and I could see the realization dawn on her. "Jake, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. I ignored her and turned my attention to Mark, who had stood up. "You really think you can take my wife from me? You think she's worth it?" I let the words hang heavy in the air. "Man, I didn't know," he started, but I cut him off again. "You didn't know, or you just didn't care." In that moment I felt powerful. I was no longer the hurt husband. I was a man taking back control. I looked back at Sophie, who now appeared desperate, her bravado crumbling. "Do you want to explain this to him, or should I?" I asked, my voice steady. She looked down, her shoulders slumping. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered, but it felt empty, devoid of any real remorse. "Right. You didn't mean for it to happen," I replied, the bitterness creeping into my tone. "But here we are. You've made your choice." Sophie opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't wait for her to make an excuse. I turned on my heel, leaving her standing there, grappling with the reality of her actions. I could feel Mark's eyes on my back, but I didn't care. They had both chosen this path, and now they would face the consequences together. As I walked out of the bar, I felt a rush of adrenaline. What I had just done felt liberating, like I had taken a stand for myself. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I had to keep my resolve. Sophie wanted freedom, and I was ready to show her just how lonely that freedom could be. This was just the beginning. After my confrontation at the bar, everything felt like a whirlwind. I drove aimlessly for a while, my mind racing with thoughts. Adrenaline pumped through my veins, and I felt an odd combination of exhilaration and intensity. I had taken a stand, but the question loomed, what now? When I finally pulled into my driveway, I knew I had to face Sophie one last time before I fully set my plan into motion. She was waiting for me, her face a canvas of confusion and fear. There was no escaping the tension in that moment. "Jake," she started, her voice shaky, "I can explain." I held up a hand to stop her. "Explain what? How you've been lying to me? How you've been flirting with someone else while I thought we were building a future together?" Her eyes filled with tears, and I could see the regret etched on her face. "I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened," she said, her voice breaking. But it was too little, too late. Her words felt like hollow excuses, nothing more than a feeble attempt to absolve herself of the consequences of her actions. "Just happened. That's your answer. You didn't think it through." I snapped back, my anger flaring again. "You think I'm just going to forgive you because you didn't plan this out? This isn't high school, Sophie. This is real life." We stood there in the entryway, a chasm growing between us, filled with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. I could see her struggling to find the right words, but nothing she could say would fix this. "Maybe I thought you didn't want me anymore," she finally said, her voice trembling. "You've been so focused on work, and I just wanted to feel something again. So, you decided to go sleep with someone else." I shot back, incredulous. "That's your solution. You could have talked to me. We could have worked on it together, but you chose to betray me instead." I know," she was shouting now, her face flushed. "But I was lonely, Jake. You were always busy, and I felt like I was losing myself." "Losing yourself?" I echoed, incredulous. "You didn't just lose yourself, you lost us. You didn't consider our marriage, our vows." Sophie sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face as the tears streamed down. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I really am. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I felt my heart crack, but I also felt the weight of my anger. "You made your choice, Sophie, and now it's time for me to make mine." In that moment, I decided I would no longer be the man who let her walk all over me. I would not allow her to dictate my emotions any longer. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. "I can't keep living like this. I deserve better, and so do you. I think it's time we take a break from each other." Her head shot up, and for the first time I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "A break? What does that mean? You can't just leave me." "Why not?" I replied, my voice steady. "You've already left me. You've been emotionally detached for a while now, so what's the difference?" I turned to walk away, but she grabbed my arm. "Wait, please, let's talk about this." I shook my head. "There's nothing left to discuss. You've shown me who you really are." I walked out of the room, leaving her sobbing on the couch. I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow wash over me. I knew this was the right choice, but it didn't make it any easier. I packed a small bag of clothes and left the house, the sound of her cries echoing in my ears as I drove away. Over the next few days, I stayed at a friend's place. I needed distance to think clearly. As I sat in my friend Mike's living room, I felt like I was in a fog. I was angry, heartbroken, and confused all at once. I had no idea what the future held, just that I couldn't go back to Sophie, at least not yet. It was during those days that I began to solidify my plan for revenge. I wasn't going to act out of spite or do something reckless, but I wanted to make sure Sophie felt the consequences of her choices. She needed to understand that her actions had repercussions. I started to play the long game. I pulled out my phone and began to reach out to some of our mutual friends. I casually mentioned how I was staying with Mike, giving them just enough information to keep the rumor mill going. I wanted them to hear my side of the story. I wanted them to know that I was done being the good husband who accepted her infidelity without a fight. Soon, whispers began circulating. Friends would reach out to me, expressing their confusion and support while I declined to give too many details. I let them speculate. I let them draw their own conclusions. I wanted Sophie to feel the weight of her choices, especially when she found out that the news had spread among our friends. And then it happened. One night I was out with Mike and a few others, enjoying a few drinks to take my mind off things. My phone buzzed with a text from a mutual friend, Lisa. Sophie is freaking out. She heard the news and is devastated. I couldn't help but smile to myself. It was working. She was feeling the pressure of her actions and it felt good. I wasn't a passive participant in this anymore. I was reclaiming my power, and with each passing day I felt stronger and more resolved. But as much as I relished this newfound sense of control, I knew I had to be careful. I didn't want to lose sight of who I was in the process. I needed to make sure my revenge didn't consume me. I had to stay focused on what I truly wanted: clarity, healing, and perhaps closure. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself reflecting more on our relationship. I was still angry, but I was also starting to feel a sense of freedom. I was no longer tied to someone who had betrayed me. The emotional weight was lifting, and while I still felt the sting of heartbreak, I was slowly learning to navigate my new reality. And then came the moment when I knew it was time to confront Sophie again. This time, I wanted to lay everything out on the table. I needed to understand if there was any possibility of salvaging what we had, or if I had to walk away for good. I had to know if she was willing to fight for our relationship, or if it was truly over. Because if there was one thing I learned from this mess, it was that I wasn't going to let her decisions dictate the course of my life any longer. I was ready to take back control and face whatever came next. The days turned into a blur, and as I settled into my new routine at Mike's place, I realized that I had to confront Sophie again. I needed clarity, and I owed it to myself to find out whether there was any hope left for us. I wasn't ready to jump back into anything, but I wanted to see if she had even begun to understand the gravity of her choices. I texted her, keeping it simple: "Can we talk?" I didn't know how she would respond, but I hoped she was ready to engage in a real conversation. To my surprise, she replied almost immediately, "Yes, I really want to talk." We set a time for the following evening. I spent the day pacing Mike's living room, running scenarios through my mind. Would she be defensive again? Would she own up to her mistakes? I was a whirlwind of emotions, anxious, hopeful, and still angry. When the moment arrived, I drove to our house, feeling a mix of dread and determination. As I approached the front door, I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I knocked, and Sophie opened the door, her eyes slightly red. I could tell she had been crying, and it tugged at my heartstrings, but I couldn't let sympathy cloud my judgment. "Hey," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. The atmosphere was heavy, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. "Let's just get straight to it," I said, taking a seat at the kitchen table. "You've had some time to think about everything. What do you want to say?" She sat across from me, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of the table. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Jake. I'm sorry for what I did. I know I hurt you, and I wish I could take it all back." Her voice quivered, and for a moment I wondered if she was sincere. "I appreciate that you're owning up to it," I replied cautiously. "But you need to understand how deep this goes. You betrayed my trust. You made me look like a fool while you were flirting with someone else." I know," she said, her voice rising in desperation. "I didn't think it would get this far. I feel terrible, and I've been going to therapy to understand why I did what I did." "Therapy? I hadn't expected that. You're going to therapy?" I asked, the surprise evident in my tone. "And what are you learning?" She took a deep breath, her expression shifting. "I'm learning that I need to work on myself. I was feeling so lost and disconnected, but that doesn't excuse what I did. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm trying to change." I narrowed my eyes, weighing her words. "You think just saying you're trying is enough? You think that's going to fix this?" "No, I don't, but I want to show you that I'm serious. I miss you, Jake. I miss us." Hearing her say that punched me in the gut. I missed her too, but I wasn't ready to let my emotions take control. "Sophie, you made a choice to cheat. You chose to hurt me. How do I know you won't do it again?" "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "But I want to prove to you that I can be better. I'm willing to fight for you, for us." My heart was conflicted. Part of me wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that we could repair the damage, but the other part screamed that I needed to protect myself. "And what if this is just a phase for you? What if you're just saying what I want to hear? Then I'll have to take the consequences. I won't blame you if you decide to walk away. But I need you to know how sorry I am and how much I want to make things right. Her vulnerability was genuine and it struck a chord within me. It was the first time I had seen her this raw, stripped of her defenses, but I couldn't let my empathy dictate my choices. What steps are you taking to make sure this doesn't happen again? I'm working on my self-esteem, she said, her voice growing steadier. I've realized I need to find happiness within myself instead of relying on others. I want to be a better partner for you, Jake. But I can't do it if I don't have the chance. The silence stretched between us, thick with tension. I thought about what she said, weighing my options. Did I want to give her a second chance? Could I trust her again? It was a risky move and I didn't want to rush into it. Look, I can't pretend that everything is fine, I said finally, my voice firm. I need time to think about this. I'm not ready to just jump back into things. I understand, she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But please know that I'm committed to making this right, whether it's with you or on my own. As I left the house that evening, I felt heavy with uncertainty. Sophie was trying to change, but was it enough? I couldn't ignore the hurt she caused me, nor could I simply forgive and forget. I needed to find clarity. The next few days passed in a haze. I kept myself busy with work and spending time with Mike. I found solace in my friends who offered support and distraction. But deep down, I was still wrestling with my feelings for Sophie. One night, after a few too many drinks, I found myself scrolling through social media. I came across a photo of Sophie and Mark together at the bar, their smiles wide and carefree. It was like a knife to my gut. The memories of her laughter, the way she would curl up next to me on the couch, flooded my mind. And suddenly, I felt rage boiling inside me again. I couldn't believe she was moving on so quickly. How could she pretend like everything was fine after everything that happened? I felt betrayed all over again, and I knew at that moment that I needed to take a step back completely. The next day, I reached out to Sophie and told her that I needed space to figure things out. I wasn't sure how long it would take, but I knew I needed to focus on myself first. I made it clear that I wasn't ready to engage further until I had clarity. In the weeks that followed, I began to rediscover who I was outside of our relationship. I threw myself into my passions, picking up hobbies I had neglected while I focused on our marriage. I went hiking, took cooking classes, and spent time with friends. I felt lighter, like I was shedding the weight of the past. Yet every so often, the thoughts of Sophie would creep back into my mind. I would wonder how she was handling the space, if she was truly reflecting on her actions or just waiting for me to change my mind. I had put my foot down, but the emotional tug-of-war continued. As I navigated this uncertain path, I began to realize that whether or not we could reconcile didn't define me. I was reclaiming my own identity, separate from the pain of our past. And in that journey of self-discovery, I finally understood what I truly wanted. Not just a relationship, but a partnership built on mutual respect and trust. And when I felt ready, I would reach out to Sophie again. But for now, I was learning to embrace my own freedom, a freedom from hurt, betrayal, and the weight of expectation. I was on a path to healing, and I wouldn't let anything derail that again. Months passed, and I moved through life with a newfound clarity. My days were filled with activities that fueled my passions and reignited my sense of self. I was learning to find joy outside of my relationship with Sophie, something I hadn't truly done in years. But even in the midst of this growth, I couldn't shake the memories of my past, the laughter, the plans, and ultimately the betrayal. Every week I would receive text messages from Sophie, some apologetic, some pleading, others sounding a bit more desperate. At first I would read them, feeling a pang of guilt every time. But as weeks turned into months, I found myself growing numb to her words. I would often think about how I had felt suffocated by her choices, and now I was finally experiencing a sense of liberation. Then came the day when I finally decided it was time to meet Sophie again. I wanted to hear her out face to face to see if she had truly changed during our time apart. I texted her, suggesting we meet at a coffee shop halfway between our places. When I arrived at the cafe, I felt a cocktail of emotions, nervousness, anticipation, and uncertainty swirling within me. Would I recognize the woman sitting across from me? Would she have truly changed, or would it simply be the same old Sophie with a temporary mask? As I walked in, I spotted her sitting at a table in the corner. She looked different, her hair was longer and she wore a more casual outfit than I remembered. But it wasn't just her appearance that had shifted. There was a sense of maturity in her posture. She looked up and met my gaze, and I could see a mixture of hope and apprehension in her eyes. "Hey," she said softly as I approached the table. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course," I replied, taking a seat. For a moment, we both just sat there, the air thick with unspoken words. I could feel the weight of our history hanging between us. "I've missed you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I know I messed up, but I've been working on myself, Jake, I really have." I studied her, searching for any signs of sincerity. "You said that before, Sophie. What's different this time?" She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly on the table. "I've been in therapy consistently. I'm learning about my feelings, what led me to cheat, and how I can be better for myself first, and for you if you allow it." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued but skeptical. "And what about Mark? Are you still seeing him?" Sophie looked down, her cheeks flushing. "No, I cut ties with him as soon as I realized how serious my issues were. I don't want that kind of distraction in my life anymore. I need to focus on healing." Her honesty caught me off guard. It seemed like she was finally taking accountability for her actions. "You realize that trust is earned, right? You don't just get it back because you say you are sorry." "I know," she replied earnestly. "I'm not asking for a free pass. I'm just asking for a chance to show you that I can be better. I want to rebuild the trust we had, but I understand that it's going to take time." I nodded slowly, trying to process her words. "Rebuilding trust is a long process, Sophie. It's not something that can happen overnight." "I'm prepared for that," she said, her voice steady. "I want to take it slow. I care about you, and I don't want to rush into anything without really understanding what went wrong." I found myself softening a little. It was refreshing to see her take such a mature approach. "What have you learned about yourself during this time?" "I've learned that I was relying too much on external validation. I lost sight of myself in the relationship and neglected my own needs. I thought being with someone else would fill that void, but it only made things worse." Her words resonated with me. I realized that I had been so focused on what she had done that I hadn't taken the time to reflect on how our relationship had changed both of us. "And what do you want now?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. "I want to be happy, Jake. I want to be better for myself first and then for you. I want to be someone you can trust again." I let her words sink in. Perhaps there was a glimmer of hope. Maybe she genuinely changed, but I still had doubts. "I need time to think," I said finally, feeling the weight of the moment. "I can't just jump back into this. I have to know that this isn't just another phase." "I understand," she replied, her expression earnest. "Take all the time you need. Just know that I'm here and I'm committed to proving to you that I can be the partner you deserve." After we finished our coffees, we walked out together, the afternoon sun casting a warm glow around us. As we stood outside the cafe, I felt a sense of uncertainty wash over me. "How do we move forward from here?" I asked. "I think we take it one step at a time," she suggested. "We can start with small conversations, maybe even hang out as friends. I just want the chance to show you I can be better." I paused, weighing her proposal. "Okay, we can start slow, but you need to understand that this is going to be a long journey. I won't rush back into anything." She smiled, a flicker of hope sparkling in her eyes. "Thank you, Jake. That means a lot to me." As I drove home, I felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. I hadn't expected the meeting to go so well, and I was left with more questions than answers. Was I ready to open that door again? Could I truly let go of the hurt? Time would tell. But for the first time in a long while, I felt a semblance of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but the possibility of rebuilding something meaningful lingered in the air. I would take it step by step, allowing myself to feel hope without letting my heart run away with it. I was learning to embrace the unknown, to trust in the journey ahead, and to keep my heart guarded while remaining open to the possibility of love. Because in the end, that's what life is, a series of moments, both good and bad, and the choice to face them head on. and maybe, just maybe, I could allow her back in, as long as she was willing to earn her place in my life once again. As I settled into my evening routine, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. No matter what happened next, I had found a strength within myself that I didn't know existed. I was ready to face whatever the future held, one step at a time. The next few weeks turned into a delicate dance. Sophie and I began to reconnect, albeit slowly. We met for coffee or lunch, talking about everything from mundane daily life to deeper conversations about our feelings and experiences since we had last seen each other. It was awkward at first, but with each meeting, the tension began to dissipate. I even found myself laughing again, and it felt good to share moments of lightness despite the weight of our history. Sophie was earnest in her efforts to show me she was changing. She would share insights from her therapy sessions, and I could see the shifts in her mindset. She was working on understanding herself better, and it was clear she was committed to her personal growth. I admired her courage, but I remained guarded, still unsure if I could fully trust her again. One evening, after a particularly enjoyable outing where we had reminisced about our favorite places, she took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eyes. "Jake, I know we're taking things slow and I respect that, but I want to be honest about something. I don't just want to get back together. I want to earn your trust back, and I want us to be partners again, but only if you're willing." Her admission struck a chord. It was refreshing to hear her articulate her desires so clearly. "I appreciate that you're being upfront with me," I replied, my heart racing slightly. "But this isn't just about you wanting to rekindle what we had. I need to know if you're truly committed to this journey, even if it's hard." "I am, and I'll show you," she said, her voice steady. "I don't want to rush things. I want us to build something stronger than what we had before." As the weeks turned into months, I noticed subtle changes in our interactions. Sophie was genuinely trying to be a better person, and I found myself softening. It was as if layers were being peeled back, revealing the parts of her I had initially fallen in love with. But with that came the responsibility of navigating my own feelings. I had to ensure that I was not just forgiving out of love, but because I believed in the possibility of a renewed relationship. One day, I suggested we take a weekend trip together. It was a way for us to step outside our routine and create new memories. To my surprise, she jumped at the idea, excitement lighting up her face. We chose a cozy cabin in the woods, a place where we could disconnect from the chaos of our lives and simply enjoy each other's company. As we arrived and settled in, the peaceful surroundings added a layer of tranquility that I desperately needed. We spent our days hiking, laughing, and talking late into the night around a crackling fire. It felt refreshing to experience a sense of freedom, freedom from hurt, from betrayal, and from the past that had hung like a dark cloud over us. On our last night, as we sat by the fire, Sophie turned to me with a serious expression. "Jake, I want to thank you for giving me this chance. I know it's not easy for you, and I appreciate your willingness to explore this with me." I nodded, appreciating her acknowledgement. "It's been a journey, that's for sure. But I've learned a lot about myself in the process. I don't want to lose sight of that." "I don't want to lose sight of that either," she said, her voice sincere. "I've realized that love is about more than just feelings. It's about actions, trust, and commitment. I want to move forward with that understanding." With the stars twinkling above us, I felt a sense of hope blossom in my chest. Maybe we could create something new, something different. I wasn't ready to declare that everything was magically fixed, but I was willing to explore the possibility. As the fire crackled, I reached for her hand, intertwining our fingers. "Let's continue to take it one day at a time. I can't promise everything will be easy, but I'm willing to see where this goes." She squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with gratitude and determination. "That's all I ask for. I want to earn your trust back, but I know it will take time and effort. I'm in this for the long haul." Over the next few months, we began to rebuild our relationship from the ground up. We communicated openly, addressed issues as they arose, and supported each other in our personal growth. I noticed the way she would give me space when I needed it, and how she made an effort to engage in conversations about my work and interests. But it wasn't just her efforts that made a difference. I was learning to forgive, not just her but myself too. I was rediscovering what it meant to be vulnerable and to let someone back in. Slowly but surely, the walls I had built began to crumble. As we celebrated our first anniversary since the fallout, I reflected on how far we'd come. We had faced the darkest parts of our relationship and emerged stronger, learning to appreciate each other again. I could see the love in her eyes and I felt the sincerity in her actions. "Here, to us," I said, raising a glass of wine at dinner, a smile creeping onto my face. "To new beginnings and a stronger future together." "To us," she echoed, her smile brightening the dimly lit restaurant. In that moment, I knew we were still a work in progress, but we were both willing to put in the effort. The pain of betrayal would always be part of our story, but it no longer defined us. Instead, it became a chapter that taught us valuable lessons about love, trust, and the strength of the human spirit. As we clinked our glasses, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had transformed from the hurt husband into a man who had fought for his own happiness. No matter what the future holds, I was committed to myself and to Sophie, ready to face whatever came next. Our journey would continue, but I was finally ready to embrace it, hand in hand, heart to heart.